Imagine waking up one morning to find that the dollar in your wallet is no longer backed by anything real, just a promise from the government, printed endlessly to fund a catastrophe that's draining trillions from the economy. Sounds like a modern nightmare. It was the reality of World War I, the conflict that didn't just redraw maps but reinvented money itself as a weapon of mass destruction. This wasn't merely a clash of armies. It was a brutal financial showdown where bankers outmaneuvered generals, debts buried empires, and the seeds of today's economic traps were sown. If you've ever wondered why inflation sneaks up on your savings or why governments seem addicted to borrowing, the answers trace back to those blood-soaked years. Stick with me as we uncover the hidden financial battlefield of the Great War, and how its echoes still rattle your bank account today. By the end, you'll see why understanding this history isn't just smart, it's essential for protecting your wealth in an uncertain world. Before the first shots rang out in 1914, the global economy hummed under the gold standard, a system where currencies were tied directly to gold reserves. Nations like Britain, France, Germany, and the United States promised that their paper money could be swapped for actual gold at fixed rates, fostering trust and stability in international trade. This setup limited how much money governments could print, as reserves were finite. Britain held about $150 million in gold, Germany around $280 million, and the US boasted $1.9 billion by 1913. It was an era of fiscal discipline, where economic powerhouses like London's financial district dominated global lending, and the British pound sterling was the world's reserve currency. But beneath this golden facade lurked tensions. Colonial rivalries, arms races, and alliances that made Europe a tinderbox. Leaders assumed any war would be swift and affordable, perhaps funded through existing taxes and modest loans. They couldn't have been more wrong. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand ignited a conflict that would consume resources on an unimaginable scale, forcing nations to shatter the gold standard's chains to survive. As mobilization orders flew in July and August 1914, financial panic gripped Europe. Stock exchanges closed, banks faced runs, and credit froze. Governments quickly realized the gold standard was a straitjacket. They couldn't expand money supplies without depleting reserves, which would cripple their war efforts. One by one, major powers suspended convertibility: Germany on July 31, Russia on August 1, France effectively by halting gold exports, and Austria-Hungary soon after. Britain held on formally but allowed the Bank of England to issue more notes backed by government securities, effectively bending the rules. The United States, neutral at first, kept the standard intact, benefiting from gold inflows as Europeans sold assets to buy American goods. This suspension was a pivotal shift. It untethered money from physical limits, allowing central banks to print currency and monetize debt. What started as a temporary measure during a supposed short war became permanent, birthing the fiat money systems we live with today. Costs exploded immediately. Germany's daily war expenditure hit 36 million marks by late 1914, Britain's soared to £1 million per day, and France's budget ballooned from 5 billion francs pre-war to 30 billion in 1915 alone. Illusions of a quick victory evaporated, replaced by the grim reality of total war demanding total financial mobilization. Let's dive into how the major players financed this apocalypse, starting with the Central Powers. Germany, under Kaiser Wilhelm II, faced isolation from global markets due to the British naval blockade. Unable to borrow abroad easily, Berlin turned inward, launching 9 massive war loan drives that raised over 98 billion marks from citizens through patriotic campaigns. Posters depicted soldiers defending the homeland, urging families to invest savings for victory's promise. But this was supplemented by heavy money creation. The Reichsbank discounted treasury bills, expanding the money supply fivefold by 1918. Taxes covered only about 15% of costs, with a one-time wealth tax in 1916 yielding little. The result? Inflation began creeping up, eroding purchasing power even before the war's end. Austria-Hungary, Germany's weaker ally, relied on similar tactics but leaned on Berlin for loans totaling 24 billion crowns, while its central bank printed notes backed by scant gold. Reserves dropped 75% as they were sold to Germany for supplies. The Ottoman Empire, another central power, borrowed heavily from Germany too, inflating its currency and racking up debts that tripled pre-war levels. These strategies prioritized short-term survival over long-term stability, setting the stage for post-war chaos. On the Allied side, Britain leveraged its position as the world's financial center. The City of London orchestrated funding not just for the UK but for the entire Entente. Chancellor David Lloyd George introduced progressive income taxes, raising rates from 6% to 30% for high earners, covering about 25% of war costs. But borrowing was king, for major war loans raised £5.9 billion, marketed with rallies, celebrity endorsements, and even tank parades in cities. Britain also borrowed internationally, securing $4.3 billion from the US by 1918. The Bank of England maintained sterling's value to attract foreign capital, spending $2 billion in reserves to peg it against the dollar. This global reach gave Britain an edge, but it came at a price. Dependence on American lenders shifted power across the Atlantic. France, scarred by the 1870 Franco-Prussian War, started with high debt at 70% of GDP. It avoided new taxes initially, relying on bonds that raised 150 billion francs domestically, plus $3 billion in foreign loans, mostly from Britain and the US. The Banque de France suspended gold convertibility, using its $840 million reserves as a war chest to back advances. Inflation doubled prices by 1918, but France's saver culture, citizens held vast personal gold hoards, helped stabilize domestic lending. If this breakdown of how old world powers gambled their economies on victory fascinates you, hit that like button and subscribe to Real Financial Truth for more eye-opening dives into history's financial underbelly. We'll keep uncovering the truths that shape your money today. Russia's story was a tragedy of mismanagement. The vast empire had impressive gold reserves of $750 million but a backward economy and fragile banking system. Taxes didn't touch war costs. Instead, it borrowed $5.5 billion from allies, with France providing $1.3 billion and Britain $2.5 billion. The central bank printed rubles recklessly, quadrupling the money supply and sparking 200% inflation by 1917. Military defeats compounded the strain, leading to food shortages and strikes. By early 1917, economic collapse fueled the February Revolution, toppling the Tsar. The Bolsheviks later repudiated all Tsarist debts in 1918, a $5 billion default that hammered French investors who had bankrolled much of Russia's pre-war industrialization. This financial implosion wasn't just a side effect, it was a catalyst for the Russian Revolution, proving how monetary chaos can topple regimes. Then came America's entry, transforming the war's financial landscape. Neutral until 1917, the U.S. profited immensely, exporting food, munitions, and raw materials to the Allies. Gold poured in, doubling reserves to $3 billion as Europeans paid for goods. Private banks like J.P. Morgan arranged $2.3 billion in loans to Britain and France by 1916, earning fat commissions. When Congress declared war in April 1917, the young Federal Reserve, established just 3 years prior, stepped up. It facilitated 5 Liberty Bond drives, raising $21.5 billion through patriotic appeals, parades, and celebrity endorsements from stars like Charlie Chaplin. The Fed offered preferential loans to banks buying Treasury certificates, keeping interest rates low to encourage public borrowing for bonds. Taxes funded 22% of U.S. war costs, with progressive rates hitting 77% on top incomes via the 1917 Revenue Act. Money creation covered 20%, but the U.S. avoided rampant inflation thanks to its creditor status. Overall, America lent $10 billion to allies, emerging as the world's banker. This shift marked the dawn of the American century, as Wall Street eclipsed London. The sheer scale of expenditure boggles the mind. The Allies spent $147 billion, in 1914 dollars, the Central Powers $63 billion, equivalent to $3.5 trillion and $1.5 trillion today. Britain alone burned through $43 billion, France $30 billion, Germany $45 billion. These sums dwarfed pre-war GDPs. Britain's war costs equaled 200% of its 1913 economy. To put it in perspective, daily spending matched entire annual budgets of smaller nations. This orgy of debt and printing shattered the old order, inflating prices worldwide. US costs rose 100%, Germany's 300%. But the real reckoning came after the armistice in November 1918. Post-war Europe was a financial wasteland. The Treaty of Versailles slapped Germany with 132 billion gold marks in reparations, $442 billion today, meant to compensate allies for destruction. But Germany, bankrupt and demobilized, defaulted in 1923, prompting French and Belgian troops to occupy the Ruhr industrial heartland. Workers' passive resistance halted production, and Berlin printed marks to pay them, igniting hyperinflation. By November 1923, $1 bought 4.2 trillion marks, wheelbarrows of cash bought bread, savings evaporated, and middle-class Germans were ruined. This economic despair fertilized the ground for Hitler's rise. Britain and France, owing $4.3 billion and $3.5 billion to the US respectively, pressured Germany for payments to service their own debts. The cycle was vicious. US insisted on repayment without linking to reparations. Enter the Dawes Plan in 1924, crafted by American banker Charles Dawes. It reduced Germany's annual payments, tied them to economic recovery, and secured a $200 million US loan to stabilize the Reichsmark. Foreign supervisors oversaw German finances, and troops left the Ruhr. It worked temporarily. US banks lent Germany $1.3 billion by 1928, which funded reparations to allies, who paid US debts. A merry-go-round of money. The Young Plan in 1929, led by Owen Young, cut total reparations to 112 billion marks over 59 years, ended supervision, and created the Bank for International Settlements. But the 1929 Wall Street crash ended the loans, triggering the Great Depression. Germany halted payments in 1931, most European debtors defaulted on US loans by 1934. Britain tried restoring the gold standard in 1925 at pre-war parity, but this overvalued the pound, stifling exports and fueling unemployment, reaching 20% in the 1930s. The US, holding 40% of global gold by 1920, boomed initially but faced its own recession in 1920-21 from demobilization. These blunders reshaped the world. Europe ceded economic supremacy, the US GDP surged 40% during the war, investments abroad tripled to $7 billion, and it became a net creditor. Globalization fractured with tariffs and controls, setting up the Depression's misery. If these tales of how financial missteps birthed dictators and depressions have you rethinking history, drop a comment below with your biggest takeaway and subscribe to Real Financial Truth. We deliver the unvarnished facts to empower your financial future. Fast forward to today, and WWI's financial ghosts haunt us. The suspension of gold birthed fiat currencies, where central banks like the Fed print money at will, echoed in quantitative easing after 2008, ballooning US debt to $35 trillion. Inflation, tamed post-war through painful deflation, now erodes savings subtly, much like Germany's pre-hyperinflation creep. Governments still fund wars and crises via borrowing, with patriotic bonds rebranded as savings vehicles. The income tax's wartime expansion, US rates from 7% to 77%, paved the way for modern fiscal policy, generating trillions annually. Interconnected debts mirror today's global finance, think Eurozone crises or US-China trade tensions. Even cryptocurrencies hark back to gold scarcity as a hedge against fiat volatility. The lesson? When money detaches from reality, manipulation thrives. Elites shift assets, while everyday folks bear inflation's brunt. World War I taught that economic warfare outlasts battles, influencing everything from stagflation in the 1970s to bailouts in 2020. In wrapping this up, remember, the Great War wasn't won solely on fields like the Somme but in vaults and ledgers. It proved money is power's ultimate arsenal, capable of building or breaking nations. By grasping these truths, you arm yourself against similar pitfalls today. Don't let history repeat. Question the narratives, scrutinize the balance sheets, and build real resilience. If this journey through WWI's financial trenches opened your eyes to the forces shaping our economy, smash that like button, subscribe to Real Financial Truth, and comment what modern parallel hits closest to home. Together, we'll keep exposing the real stories behind your money. Thanks for watching, stay vigilant.